What the hell did I read in January? I feel like January is like a blur in my mind. Hello book reading friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Melanie, and today I am here with all the books I read in January, also known as my January wrap-up. Now, this one is coming after my TBR, so it feels kind of weird to be filming it now, and I've already read 3 books in February. I feel like it's probably not the best timing to film this, but hopefully we'll get it right as I go along the list of books that I read in January. It was a great start of the year. I read 12 books, which is probably one of my best reading months as of today. I think overall, I only had one like low rated book and it was still not bad. I think my lowest rated book, I believe it was a 3-star. So overall, a great reading month, tons of books, and overall very, very positive. And if you have yet to subscribe to my channel, don't forget to do so down below for more bookish content. I am constantly uploading videos that I am sure you do not want to miss. I'm also live streaming throughout the week, doing my weekly reading sprints, and you can also follow me on all my social medias, which are always linked down below. I have a Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads, and an Amazon wish list. You guys know the drill. And yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. It feels so long ago that I read this book, but it was actually a month ago. And the first book that I actually read in January is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. This is the final installment in the Throne of Glass series. As you can see, this book is heavily annotated. I freaking loved it. And I don't think this book needs any introduction. Everybody knows what Throne of Glass is by now. I was so freaking scared after Empire of Storms. I was so scared after Tower of Dawn. I was so scared after all of these books that were definitely setting up for this big climax. There was plot twist after plot twist after plot twist in all of the previous books, but I definitely did not know how this one was going to end. I don't think there was any other way that this book could have ended. And although it did wrap up in a nice, pretty bow, as some people would call it, I really do think that ending was earned. You see the suffering of these characters and all of the horrible things they've gone through for 6 books, that this ending, they earned it. And I will never say this enough, but all of the action scenes in Throne of Glass, all of the battle scenes, the war, everything was so descriptive. It was just phenomenal writing. After finishing Throne of Glass, I am now so torn with what I like best, whether that's Throne of Glass or ACOTAR, because I've always said that ACOTAR is my favorite series, but now Throne of Glass is making me question whether it actually is or isn't, or if it was because I hadn't read Throne of Glass yet, because I just fell in love with these characters and with their journeys and the way that not everything is exactly what it seems. My heart breaks and it remakes itself for Aelin and her arc and her journey. It's so heartbreaking to see a character literally carry the weight of the world on her shoulders and have to go through everything that she went through. Just fantastic. 5 out of 5 stars. Just a perfect ending. And the next book I read was actually an audiobook, and this was the month where I really started getting into audiobooks, especially when I started journaling. I found myself really reaching for audiobooks as I journaled, as I filled everything in my journal, and it was quite honestly a breath of fresh air to actually get into audiobooks properly and be able to listen to them and be immersed in these stories. And it is The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. This is a book that is written in verse. I personally adored the narration of this book because it is actually narrated by the author, and that is one of my favorite things, and I did not know that this was narrated by Dean Atta, so I was definitely shocked when I went into it. I was like, oh, okay, I'm vibing with this. I like it. And in this one, we follow Michael, who is a teen boy coming to terms with his identity as a mixed race boy. He is also coming to terms with his sexuality as he is in high school, and then he transitions into university and he finds the power of drag. So a lot of his discovery is made through drag and through personal experiences by himself and with boys, and narrating all of those pivotal moments that he had throughout his childhood and again into his adulthood. I personally think this book was equal parts heartbreaking as it was hopeful, as it was empowering, because following Michael from a very young age, we see him more interested in Barbies than he is in Hot Wheels, and he is more interested in the clothes and the makeup and things that aren't necessarily considered boyish by societal standards. And we see him trying to come to terms with that and what exactly it means to him and what it means for the people around him. And if you've read the book, you know the whole conversation about the Barbie doll and all of those scenes where he just really yearned to have one himself, and he was jealous of of his friend for having one, because that is everything he yearned for. And then when he goes to college and he discovers drag and how empowered he feels by it and how liberated and accepted and fierce, it was just a beautiful story. And the writing gets you so freaking hard just listening to it and to all of his experiences and him questioning his sexuality and seeing Michael compare all of those experiences that he's heard about versus what he's experienced when he was younger. It was just a fantastic journey to go through with this character. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I really do think if you're looking for a short book, you're looking for a good audiobook, the Black Flamingo is definitely the route to go. There are so many quotes that I remember with this book, but let me pull this particular one because it's just, men are sandcastles made out of pebbles and the bucket is patriarchy. If you remove it, we fear we won't be able to hold ourselves together. We pour cement to fill the gaps, to make ourselves concrete constructions. There were just so many beautiful moments in that book, so if you haven't read The Black Flamingo, I definitely recommend it. This next one is my only 3-star of the month, and it was actually One by One by Ruth Ware. Now, this book, I was just confused with this book, if I'm being honest. Maybe, and this is my personal opinion, audiobook is not the way to read this book. For a second there, I thought this book had 9 different POVs, and that just tells you how confused I was with the story, because this story only has 2 points of view, not 9. I don't know why I ever thought it was 9 people. So in this one, we follow 8 workers from a company called Snoop, and this company is almost like a Spotify where you can see what everyone is listening to real time and you can listen to them as they are listening. So the name's pretty fitting, Snoop, you're snooping onto other people's playlists. And the story truly kicks off once all of these workers go into a snowy retreat in the Alps where they want to go skiing and they just want to take some time off from work. But once they get to their retreat and one of them actually suffers from a very big accident, they all start dying or disappearing one by one. I think the story was certainly interesting. It was very techy. Every single chapter started with the Snoop ID from the person who was narrating said chapter, and I think that's where it got a little bit confusing to me, because it said Snoop ID 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, listening to Positions by Ariana Grande. It literally, like, every single chapter started like that, so I was just confused as to who was who and who was talking. And because I was so confused, it was hard for me to keep up with the story itself. And when we got to that point of the reveal of the book, I will say it was very thrilling, it was very exciting, it was just stressful. I think that part of the book, the later third, was definitely great in audio because you could feel the stress from the characters. And I also love there is one chase scene in the book towards the end where you get 2 POVs from the person who's running away and from the person who's doing the chasing, and hearing that on audio was just so freaking intense, and it was just so insidious and so devious, just the way that this person was out to get the main character and out to kill the main character. It was so wild to listen to that on audio. I will say that was probably my favorite part of the book, but everything else kind of like just fell apart for me. And I didn't rate this lower because I didn't think it was fair. I think it was on me listening to this audiobook. I also think with the audiobook, all of these voices started sounding very similar to me, to the point where I could not differentiate who was talking except for their boss. I feel like their boss was probably the only person who had such a distinctive tone of voice, and it was only because he was a douchebag. Besides that, everything else just meshed together for me. I was like, who's who? The next book I read is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager, and this is my first Riley Sager ever. And after reading this, I do want to get into more of his work. I thought I was gonna have nightmares after reading this. Definitely did not happen. Like, public announcement service, I did not have nightmares, so that was great. It was still very much spooky. So 7 out of 10 for the scare tactics. I definitely was spooked at some points of this book. And in this one, we follow Maggie, who is a skeptic. She does not believe in ghosts. She does not believe in anything paranormal or supernatural, especially after the events that happened when she was younger. When she was younger, she used to live in this manor with her parents, and her dad ended up writing an entire memoir of supernatural and paranormal things that wound up happening in this manner. To closets opening themselves, to kids being dragged on ceilings, to record machines starting and stopping by themselves, to snakes falling out of the ceiling. Everything that you could think of, anything crazy, probably had happened in this manor. And now, many years later, once her father passes away, she needs to go back to this manor because he left her this manor on his will. And she will go there to flip the house to hopefully sell it. And she will start experiencing things that may or may not reaffirm what happened in the memoir that her father wrote many years in the past. I think he definitely nailed down that female voice, and it was really nice to read about. It was really nice to see Maggie have such a strong backbone where she didn't depend on people, she didn't want to depend on anyone rather, and she never succumbed to anything that would seem out of character. So for that alone, I definitely enjoyed this book. I also think the horror aspect of the book was very much there. It was very spooky, it was very creepy, it was just horrifying at times too. Like, I was sitting there and I was like, I'm not gonna read this book at night. There was this whole scene with snakes that I was just disgusted by. If you guys don't know, I have the biggest fear of snakes. If there is a name for that, please let me know in the comments. But I see a snake and I start crying. Just remembering it, like there was snakes everywhere. There was snakes in the coffee, snakes just falling out of the ceiling and just chasing people around the house. I don't think I can speak in any more detail about that scene because I was reading it and I was reading it like this. So it's a testament to the writing. It was described really, really well. The description in here was fantastic. The atmosphere of the book definitely set the tone for that creepiness aspect of it. I think what fell a little bit apart for me was the ending, because when you have horror books, there's always the question of, is this actually going to be paranormal or is this going to be more psychological? And at the end, this book turned more into a whodunit plus the paranormal aspect. That part to me was just a little bit too all over the place, although it tied in nicely, although it did make a lot of sense. I did give the book 4 stars because I loved the writing. I definitely want to read more Riley Sager. I loved Maggie as a main character. I really do think she was a perfect conduit for this story, just because she is a skeptic, so you don't go into the book expecting someone who's just gonna be scared because they're scared at everything. So it's definitely gonna be paranormal. In here, you actually are questioning the entire time whether it's psychological or not. The next one is a book that I actually read for a reading vlog, and this reading vlog is going up next week. I believe it'll be going up midweek. I still need to finish editing, but it's actually Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson, and oh boy, what a book. In this one, we follow Enchanted Jones, who is a teenager, and she's wanted to make it big in the music industry for the longest time. That is her biggest dream and aspiration. She wants to be a singer. She wants to do this professionally. And once she meets Corey Fields, who is one of the biggest names in the music industry, and she starts befriending him and forming a very friendly, or what it seems like friendly relationship, she believes she has everything at the palm of her hand, because with his connections, with his contacts, she believes she can truly make it. And he makes her all of those promises and more, until she starts seeing the darker side of the music industry and that everything is not exactly what it seems. It was such an infuriating read. It was so just heartbreaking to see Enchanted go through all of these emotions, to go through all of these scenes, to go through all of this emotional and physical abuse with a person who clearly is after his own agenda and who's clearly after whatever he's doing for his own sick and twisted motivation. And it was so heartbreaking to see a person who's genuinely passionate about what they're doing, who genuinely wants to make it and who has the best intention at heart, be subjected to this type of lifestyle when that is not what she signed up for. The picture that Tiffany D. Jackson painted with this book was so perfectly done and well crafted. I just will never get over this book. I was just mad throughout the entirety of it. There was not a single page that I was turning where I was not feeling something, and that is just what Tiffany D. Jackson does to you with her writing. There are trigger warnings for it. I will read them to you. And what I do love about this book, which is something that I also talked about in my reading vlog, it actually has the content warnings at the beginning of the book. Mentions of sexual abuse, rape, assault, child abuse, kidnapping, and addiction to opioids. I think what's more heartbreaking to me is the fact that this actually happens in real life, and there's people who've had to go through these experiences and deal with the situations that nobody deserves to go through. I'll go more into detail once I actually put up my reading vlog. I did give the book 5 out of 5 stars, and there's just a lot to unpack here. This is just such such a complex book to talk about that I feel it's hard to not talk about it in detail. So if you want to see more, again, my reading vlog will be up next week. I do believe it should go up on Wednesday. That's my goal. The next book I read in January was Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, and this was actually a completely accidental read. I was bourgeoising, I was doing my thing, and I wanted to listen to an audiobook while I was doing that. I started browsing on Script. I was like, let's see what they have. I also wanted to finish a book that day to feel productive, and I found Long Way Down, which I know a lot of people have read and loved. And the craziest thing about this book, it's that it's internal. It's contemplation. This book takes place in the span of 60 seconds. And in this one, we follow Will, and he literally has a gun on the waistband of his pants, and he is ready to call justice for the injustice of what happened to his brother. And once he gets into an elevator, a man on a mission, people start getting into the elevator, and he starts contemplating on whether or not this is the right call to make. From dead characters hopping on this elevator and contemplating with Will, to another strange girl getting on that elevator, Will starts going through this roller coaster of emotions in the span of 60 seconds from that elevator ride. There are so many fantastic quotes on this book, from pretended like yellow tape was some kind of neighborhood flag that don't nobody wave but always be flapping in the wind. How do you tell water ain't nothing funny about drowning? It was such an emotional read because you can sense that desperation that Will has because nobody's doing anything about it, and he feels the need to call for justice himself. And this definitely tells the heartbreaking story of a kid who's just trying to live by the rules that he's been taught his entire life, while also in a way being reluctant to follow them because he doesn't know if they're necessarily right by the way that those events have played out in the past, and almost break out of that cycle that he's continuously seen for his family members and the people surrounding him. I was just continuously amazed by Jason Reynolds' power with words and how he weaves everything together into such a quick string of words. The story was so fast-paced. Is that cheating if I read this book again like a month later? I don't know if I said the rating already, but you probably could guess. 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely. The next book I read in January was actually Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I do have a whole dedicated review to this book. I will leave it linked down below. Ninth House is a dark academia, and dark academia is almost like a subgenre of gothic literature, so you kind of know what to expect. Heavy in description, probably less dialogue, very atmospheric. That is what you get with gothic literature. And in this one, we follow Alex Stern, who is the sole survivor of this very big accident that happened to her and her friends. And while she is on her deathbed, essentially, on the hospital, she receives an opportunity from one of the higher people in Yale, who's actually a part of a secret society called Lethe, to come to Yale full ride scholarship because she has the power to see grays, who are ghosts, essentially, and they could really use her power in the 9 secret societies of Yale. She does not embody the typical person who would be in there, not high class, doesn't come from money, and once she gets to Yale and she starts learning the ropes of all of these secret societies, she will learn a lot more than she probably wanted to about how the world works and how these secret societies work. And there's also a disappearance in here and a murder mystery. One of my favorite aspects of this book was definitely the social commentary that it provided on class, money, power, race. Just a ton of different things were unpacked in this book, and although a lot of them were not done in the most outright way, it was still done in a very subtle way that were definitely jabs to those powerful people who think they can get away with anything. And it was very interesting to see how all of that fit together with this particular setting. The description was also something that I personally really enjoyed. So this book was a 5 out of 5 stars for me. I definitely enjoyed it. I won't really over talk about it because, again, I do have an entire review for it. So if you want to know all of my thoughts unpacked, I will leave that linked down below. In January, I also obviously read A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. As you know, I am hosting the Thorns and Roses Along, which is a read-along for the Call of the ACOTAR series up until the release of A Court of Silver Flames. And this month, we're actually reading the 3rd book and the novella. January was the month for the 2nd book, which is Akomov. If you know, this is one of my favorite books of all time. I definitely do think I read this at the right time. I read this 4 years ago now, and I fell in love with the story, with the characters. So going into Akomov is always a breath of fresh air because we do get to see a lot of character development, particularly particularly from Feyre, where in book 1, after the events of Under the Mountain, she definitely is dealing with a lot of PTSD and depression and her own trauma. And I always love the way that Sarah J. Maas incorporates mental health into her books. It's always been a big component of her stories. As we know, Tamlin is not a character that I particularly love, but I think there's also such a beauty to his characters. There's such a level of complexity there, a lot of insecurity and toxicity, but also a lot of trauma, even after Under the Mountain. And although their levels of trauma are not comparable, they're both still there. They experience things very differently. And I always love to see Feyre's journey, overcoming all of that she had to go through, but also meeting a new set of characters that she fits a lot more with, and exploring a lot of different places. And Prithian is also a breath of fresh air in Akomov. We get to see the Summer Court, we get to see the Spring Court, we get to see the Night Court, the Court of Nightmares, we get to see Valaris. There's just a ton of different places that we get to see. We also get to see Hybern. So there's just a lot of different elements to this book that I particularly enjoy. There's also the talk of soulmates, of acceptance. Again, if you want to know all my thoughts as I go, as we discussed it, I will also link our live show for Akomov down in the description box if you're interested to check that out and want to catch up before we discuss the third book and the novella. Did I even say the rating for Akomov? I don't think I need to, but anyway, it's a 5 out of 5 stars. If we didn't already know that I always rate that book a 5 out of 5 stars. Next up, I have You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson, and I adored this book. This book was so just heartwarming and like happy and like hopeful. And in this one, we follow Liz Leidy, who definitely wants to get out of her small town in Indiana. She wants to break out of her shell. She wants to get out of there because she feels as a Black woman, she does not fit in that place. And she has the perfect plan. She wants to go to her dream college, get a scholarship that can cover all of her costs, and just leave. Except her entire plan falls apart once she does not get that scholarship. And her only hope is now the scholarship that her school offers for those who win prom king and prom queen. So she becomes a contender in the race, and in the midst of that, she actually ends up meeting Mac, who is the new girl at school and also another contender for prom queen. The thing that I definitely adored about this book is the fact that it was so wholesome. It is sapphic, it does have LGBTQ plus representation, and I just loved Liz's relationship with Mac and the way that they came to terms with their relationship and the way that they want to appear to the world despite what everyone is saying. But we also see a lot of talk in this book about societal standards and oppression, and how even to this day in some places, in some schools, being yourself is still not enough. They ask you to hide, they ask you to not be present only to appease everybody else. And it was insane in this book to read about, in this particular school that Liz attends, that women can only go to prom wearing a dress, and men can only go to prom wearing a tux, and women cannot go with women, and men cannot go with men. And the conversation was just established and developed beautifully about a broken system, or a system that perhaps was established that way and is working out perfectly, that the standard is literally to be cisgender, heterosexual, and white. And if you don't fit that mold, then you don't belong. And again, there's also the conversation of, if there's not a space for me, I will make that space. I will make them make that space. And it was such a beautiful ride to go on with Liz and Mac. And at first, I was loving Liz's friends, and at the end, I was infuriated by Liz's friends. And I actually, one of my favorite quotes that I wrote down for January is actually from You Should See Me in a Crown. And I just remember listening to this because I did do the audiobook. And by the way, the audiobook for this is freaking incredible. The quote that I wrote down as one of my favorites for the month was, "The crown nestled into my tight black curls, my hair all defiance, while hers is tradition." This book is just fantastic. I really need to own this book physically. It's definitely a book that I want to reread physically and annotate and love because it deserves all the love. And I know Leah Johnson is coming out with another book this year. I think it's called Rise to the Sun. I cannot wait for that one too. And I did give this book a 4-star, although the more I think about this book, it probably does feel like a 4.5 or a 5. But I do remember at the point of reading this book, I felt like some parts of it were too fast-paced, or they felt kind of unrealistic, or the conflict felt too easy, or the conflict fell a little bit apart for me. There were certain things about the book that, to me at least, it could have been executed a little bit better. But overall, chef's kiss. Stunning book. The next book I read was Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson, and this book, let me unpack this book quite quickly because, again, I won't be going too in-depth about it. I do have a whole reading vlog on it. It's, again, the Tiffany D. Jackson reading vlog vlog that's going up next week. In this book, we follow Claudia, who's been best friends with Monday since they were very, very young. And one day when she comes back to school, Monday is not there. Monday has mysteriously disappeared and nobody's making a big deal out of it. In fact, when she asks the grown-ups, they don't make a fuss out of it. Nobody can give her a straight answer, much less Monday's family, her mom, her sister April. They're all being super standoffish about the situation, and Claudia does not understand why. And so she takes it upon herself to find out exactly what happened to her best friend, since nobody around her seems to give a crap that she literally disappeared. I just need to preface this by saying that I gave the book 4 stars. I thought I would love this book more than Grown, and for a while I do believe I was kind of enjoying it a little bit more, but the ending made this book fall apart for me. I was so confused by the end of this book. I had to FaceTime my friend to say out loud why I was confused and to see if I was crazy or if I was actually getting stuff right. And the point of the matter is I was confused. I'm still confused. There were several things that at the end of the book were inconsistent with what had been said before. Don't get me wrong, the writing was incredible. The story itself, the mystery aspect of the book was so well crafted. Like, I was literally playing detective for the majority of the book. And the fact that this book has several different timelines, it has the now, it has the before, it has the before. I found those so interesting because you get to see a lot of different facets of Claudia and Monday's relationship, how they interacted with each other and how other people perceived them and all of the things that they had gone through together to make them so close. And so that part of the book I totally love. I will say though, because the characters are so young, the book reads young. The characters are 14 for a lot of the book, and the main character will probably infuriate you at times. She will probably get annoying at times, and it obviously comes from a place of trauma and the fact that she's very young and the fact that she has become so dependent on her friend in a lot of different aspects because of the way that they grew up together so tight-knit. Again, I will unpack a lot of this book once I put up my reading vlog. I read a graphic novel in January during our 24-hour readathon because Mel was feeling slumpy, and I'm not afraid to admit it, and I had to pull out a graphic novel. And so I ended up reading Fence Volume 1, and when I tell you that this is one of my favorite graphic novels that I've ever read, and I say that very loosely because I've only read 2, I freaking love Fence. In Fence, we follow our main character, who is the bastard child of a very famous fencer, and he has a half-sibling who goes to this very prestigious academy. And Nicholas, our main character, also wants to make it big in the fencing community. He wants to prove himself to his father. He wants to prove himself to himself and to the people around him because nobody seems to believe that he can actually make it in this industry. And so he applies to this other prestigious academy to hopefully make the cut for the fencing team, receive a scholarship, and properly train because he's never received proper training for fencing before. Such a page turner starting from there. Such a quick read as well. Like, I feel if I had all of the graphic novels with me, I probably could have read them all back to back because that's how easily these read. I definitely want to buy myself the rest of the Fence saga situation because I want to keep reading Fence. Not only do we get LGBTQ plus representation in here, we also get a lot of explanation into fencing, which I found super intriguing. It explains to you all of the positions, the strike moves, things that you wouldn't inherently understand from fencing because, of course, if you're not in the industry, what would you know? And the fact that it breaks everything down for the reader as they go, as they're training, it was so freaking cool to read that, but also to see this prestigious academy and all of the fencing team and all of them competing for like that one spot. It was all like such an immersive journey to go through, and I cannot wait to read more of Fence. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I don't think there's much else to say about this graphic novel. I just need to know how this will continue because in this one we kind of end in a cliffhanger. And then the last book I read in January was Intercepted by Alexa Martin, and what a freaking romance book. Let me tell you, if you are looking for a romance, just pick Intercepted up right now because I was feeling so slumpy. This was mid 24-hour readathon. I picked Intercepted up and it got me out of that freaking slump and it made me into a killing machine of reading because now I have finished 3 books in February. I don't know what this book did to me, but it pumped life into me. That's what it did. It pumped life into me. And in this one, we follow Marley, who believes she scored the man of her dreams. She feels very much settled in life, like she has got everything she needs, and her boyfriend is actually a football player for the Denver Mustangs. Except when she figures out that he has been betraying her, obviously behind her back, she vows to never date an athlete ever again. Except there is one Gavin Pope to enter to this mix. Gavin is the new quarterback that the Mustangs have hired. He has a newly signed contract, and he is fighting to prove to Marley that he is nothing like her cheating, lying ex. Except there's a lot of other components as well fighting against them, like the team's wives, who have their own little club, like the NFL wives situation, and they are fighting against Marley. They do not want her back because they feel like she is a groupie. And there is also a bunch of more drama in here with tabloids and news and a robbery and cheating and lying, and just this book was so much fun to read. It is also kind of steamy. I wouldn't say it's like overly steamy. I would say there's some level of steam in here, but nothing too crazy. I thought there would be more. I kind of wanted more. The sports romance aspect of the book was something that I really enjoyed. I always find myself intrigued by these stories, and I just loved reading about Marley. She is such a strong character. She definitely has a backbone. She is not afraid to fight back, to talk back, to defend herself. She fights her own battles, and that is something that I feel we need to see more of in general in literature. So that was also a breath of fresh air. Gavin also 10 out of 10 love interest until we got to like the mid portion end of the book. There was something there with Gavin that wasn't really giving it to me, because he was overstepping his boundaries, especially with the things that Marley had told him. She's like, I want to fight my own battles, do not step in, do not speak for me, and he tends to do that a lot in the book as well. There was certainly a boundary breach with Gavin that I did not appreciate, but overall the romance aspect of it to me was just really cool. There were other things that I thoroughly enjoyed, like the drama of it. It was definitely like I was living for it. And then Marley's friends were also just a joy to read about, and I know one of them actually has a book. She is actually the main character of book 3, so I definitely want to see her story and how that comes about. All in all, I gave the book 4 stars. I think it was a very enjoyable romance. It definitely got me out of my slump, which was exactly what I needed at the time. And yeah, those are all the books that I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Comment down below what books you read in January. If you found a new favorite book, also let me know down below in the comments. But if you reached the end of the video, let's leave some bird emojis down below, whatever bird you want, in honor of me rereading Akuma. Like always, you guys know I freaking love that book, so let's leave some bird emojis down below in honor of that. Subscribe down below for more bookish content if you haven't already. I am constantly uploading videos that I'm sure you do not want to miss, as well as live streaming throughout the week, doing my weekly reading sprints. And you can also follow me on all of my social medias. They are always linked down below. And yeah, that is it for today. I love you guys so much, and I will see you on the next one. Bye guys.